I grew up here in Morristown. I lived here my whole life. Pretty good kid. I played sports, lots of sports. Made good grades. Me and my buddies, we also like to have a good time too. Grew up on a farm, so we worked a lot and played a lot. Had awesome parents. My parents, they took us to church every Sunday. I also knew though, if you went to church on Sunday, then I went to church mostly just to keep my mom off my back, you know what I mean? But I was taught about Jesus at an early age and taught about, how to love God. And, I'm definitely glad I did because it definitely helped me later on. But anyway, went through high school, was definitely doing some things I shouldn't have been doing. I ran around with some older kids and, a lot of partying. We did that a lot, but I was still responsible. I went to work every day, still went to school. And then, the partying just kind of intensified and grew and roller coastered, really. Went to college. Well, I attempted to go to college. I tried college. And so about that time, there was also like a national epidemic of the opioid crisis. This was around 2007. And those things were everywhere. Honestly, it was easier to go get that in Morristown than it would be to be underage and try to go buy, alcohol. I started taking those, and I didn't know anything about them. I went from a kid who had friends, had a job, made good grades, to a kid who didn't even know himself anymore. Addiction took control of my life. It ran my life from the time I woke up till the time I went to bed. It made me the most selfish person in every room I was in. Obviously, it cost a lot of money to keep up a habit like that. It strains relationships, and then it starts taking its toll, and then you have to start using more and more and more. And then your addiction becomes more noticeable to everybody around you. And that's whenever, really, once people start noticing, and you start realizing, man, like I've got a problem, but I don't know how to stop. It's like trying to drive a truck with no brakes. You can push the pedal, the brake pedal, but you're not gonna stop. It's just a crash landing. So I was just on this cycle, and I remember praying like, God, like, would you please get me out of this? Like, please, would you please get me out of this cycle that I'm in? And then, something would happen. I would go to rehab. I'd do a little better. Kind of got everybody off my back, that sort of thing. But then I'd find myself right back in the same boat 2 months later, even deeper. Whitney and my mom were at home waiting on me to come home because we were going to do like a Thanksgiving dinner. And so I never showed up. And then my mom gets one of the collect calls from Knox County. So yeah, I wound up getting arrested, facing some pretty serious charges. I'll never forget that phone call. I didn't say anything. I just said, the only thing I know is I said I got arrested. Honestly, I was as relieved as I was. I just knew that, thank God someone stopped me. I can smell what the back of that police car smelled like, and having that thought, thank God, this is over. Spent some time in Knox County. I wound up getting placed into the God Pod. So Knox County at the time had a prison ministry called the God Pod. And they put me in there. I was scared to death, honestly. And so they were like, hey man, are you ready for tomorrow Sunday? We're gonna be having a church service. And I was like, whatever. I could care less at this point. A preacher come in, and I can't remember his name, but I can tell you exactly what he looked like. This dude was 6'4". He was huge. And so I'm sitting there just junked out. Dude just sitting in a jail cell. And I remember him saying, he said, do you believe in God? And I was like, yeah. And he said, do you believe that God can change your life? And I was like, honestly, no. And he said, well, let me ask you this. He said, you believe in God. He said, so do you believe that God created the heaven, the earth, everything you see outside. And I was sitting there and I was thinking, yeah, I mean, I believe that. I've always believed that God made the heaven and earth. He said, well, don't you think that if God can make the heaven, the earth, light, sun, darkness, the tides, animals in 7 days, that he can fix your addiction? And I never thought about it like that. And so I was locked up for several weeks, got out basically on a form of house arrest. I did things I'd never done before. I prayed every day. I went to church every time I could. And honestly, I just decided that I wanted to be consistently different every day. Man, just God's hand all over this whole situation in my life. I wound up getting all the charges dropped. I have nothing on my record. From what could have been 6 felonies to nothing on my record. When I said that I became the most selfish person in the room, is like having a realization that like Jesus did the exact opposite of that for me. Like Jesus died for me. That's the most selfless thing that you can do. Like going forward, I know that when times have gotten hard, it's kind of like having a bank. I've been able to go back to that and be like, nah, like he showed up for me in that cop car. He showed up for me in the courthouse. When I met my wife, when my kids got sick, the life I have now is the life that like I dreamed about. The worst part of my life became the best part of my life.